Welcome to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. I'm your host, Jessie Sage.
Put away the lingerie. I want to know you. Tell me more. I don't care about the news. I want to hear about you and see the world from your point of view. The coffee's already made, so I'll part the shades, just pull up a chair and tell me more.
When We're Not Hustling is a weekly podcast that explores the lives and identities of sex workers outside of our work personas, our personal philosophies, ambitions, families, relationships, passions, spirituality, and so much more. We talk about our lives beyond the job, asking, what does the flexibility of sex work allow us to do, and who does it allow us to be? On this show, we learn who sex workers are outside of the work we're known for. When We're Not Hustling is an exploration of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is brought to you by Assembly 4. Assembly 4 is a collective of sex workers and technologists working to bring the overall cost of sex work down through their advertising platform, Tryst.link. They also educate clients through the Good Client Guide and provide resources and articles written by and for sex workers. Assembly 4 caters to all genders and demographics and raises funds to fight for sex worker rights and against exploitation in the sex industry. Learn more at assembly4.com. ASSEMBLYFOUR.com. Hi, this is Jessie Sage. Welcome back to another episode of When We're Not Hustling, sex workers talking about everything but. This is episode 18. We have Melodie Garcia on this week, and I am very excited to talk to her. This is actually the first time that I've talked to her. Many of the guests we've had on the show I've talked to in other capacities, but this was the first time with her, which made it fun because I got to know a lot about her life and where she's come from and the work she's doing, and it is very cool. So you guys are going to like this episode. Before we get to that, I want to say that this is episode 18. We have one episode next week, and as a little preview, the guest for next week is going to be PJ, my partner, and they are going to be talking about how sex work has impacted their life as both a former sex worker and a spouse of a sex worker, or in other words, my spouse. So that's going to be next week, and then episode 20 is going to be our roundtable discussion. And the guiding principle of this roundtable discussion, or the guiding question rather of this roundtable discussion, is going to be what feeds our spirit. So when Emily and I talked about what we'd gained from season 1, from which has been so much, everything that the guests have brought us, we thought that one of the themes that kept coming up over and over again is kind of what feeds and replenishes the spirits of our guests. And so we wanted to bring a few people back to put them in conversation with each other, specifically about that. So we're looking forward to that. And next week, I'll tell you who the 5 guests are going to be. We're very excited about that. And that's going to come out the first week of June. And then we're taking the rest of the month of June off. And then starting the first week of July, season 2 is going to start. So we are going to have 19 more guests, and actually half of them are already booked. So we are rolling. That's very, very exciting. We are going to be doing some rebranding. I think we're going to have a new version of the song, maybe a new color. We're going to do a few things to get us set up for season 2. We're going to get our website put together, and we are also going to be looking for more sponsors. So we are very, very grateful that we've had Tryst sponsor us all the way through season 1, and I'm assuming they are going to do so as well in season 2. If you happen to be an organization or even an individual who wants to sponsor the pod, we would love to hear from you for season 2. Even if it's just an episode or a group of episodes, we would love to give you a shout out, put you or your organization on the website. whatever it is that you guys want. We would love to partner up with some more people in the community and organizations. I think that's it in terms of announcements for now. We will be talking to Melodie Garcia today. Melodie Garcia is the co-director of the New Moon Network and a public sector consultant specializing in human services, program design, grassroots organizational development, and community engagement. She has 12 plus years of experience providing community organizing and education, as well as providing direct services to people living in poverty. In her consulting practices, she helps government agencies develop trauma-informed programming for low-resourced and over-policed communities, including drug users, sex workers, and people living unhoused. She is also a policy analyst, writer, artist, and skillful facilitator. She has a master's degree in public administration from the University of Washington, Evans School of Public Policy, and a professional certificate in nonprofit management. Aside from education, she brings important lived experience as a peer in behavioral health and as a participant in the sex trades. So we are very lucky to have her on the show, and she is going to be talking about what sex workers can do with their skills that they develop within sex work to move those into other sectors of the economy, should they choose to. So let's get to it. Hi, Melodie. Welcome to When We're Not Hustling.
Hi, Jessie. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. So we were in the same room last week, but it was so crowded. I did not see you.
It was so packed. It honestly made me feel so good to just be in this crowded bar full of hookers and allies and friends and family, like kind of, communing around the shared art that you and other folks contributed. It was really beautiful.
It was, yeah. So we kind of jumped into this, but this was the book launch event in New York for the Holy Hour. And yeah, I did not expect that kind of turnout.
I didn't either. I did a little book launch of myself, a contributor style book launch, and never, even with the several talks that I gave, had never seen a space that energetic and loving and full. It was really, really successful, and kudos to you all, contributors and editors of the Holy Hour for.
Yeah. So tell me about the book that you launched or that you contributed to.
So I contributed to a book that launched last year, self-published, called Towards Bodily Autonomy. It's being relaunched this month, actually, as Body Autonomy by Justice Rivera.
Oh, they were on my last show, on Peep Show.
Yeah, they're
and
great.
Was great. I love the work that they're doing.
Yeah, they do some really amazing work, and I was really lucky to be a part of that anthology. I just got together with Cinnamon Love, and they did the foreword for that, right? They sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Cinnamon was at the Holy Hour as well.
Yeah, that's where I saw. That's where I saw her, and it's funny because we're like old, and there was like such a party going on, and Cinnamon and I were like, "Let's sneak out." This is a bit overwhelming. I mean, we stayed for the whole event, obviously, but we did not make it to the after party. We went to like this little Mediterranean place, and it was quiet, and we had a feast, and it was very nice.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. Did you go to the after party?
I did not. I did the same thing you all did. I kind of Irish goodbye. I got some sushi by myself and was in bed by like 9:30. So
I have a funny story. So a client of mine, a very lovely client of mine, came with me to the event, and and he's very funny. I think that there'll be some people who listen who will know who I'm talking about because I've done several duos with him. So some of my friends know him too. And he asked me, because he was coming with me, and he's like, "Do you mind if I bring another provider?" And I was like, because he just thought she would like it. And I was like, "Yeah, sure, totally. Like, it'll be a party. It'll be fun." Yeah. So I met her there, and like the two of us, all three of us are sitting together. And then he completely Irish goodbye because he was that's just his style. He just does that sometimes. Like he just checks out. And then she looks at me, and she doesn't know him as well as I do. And she's like, I think he's gone. And I was like, yeah, that's normal.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's gone. And then so she looked at me and she's like, well, it was nice being on a date with you.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
It was very cute. It was very fun. And she was like, yeah, this was fun. I showed up and I don't know where he is. So
I love that. The clients who Irish goodbye, like, okay.
Yeah,
great.
right. I just pulled out when she said, I think he's gone, because I had to go like sign books and stuff. I was like, I pulled out my phone and there was like, that was really nice. Thanks. I have a good night.
Okay.
But
thanks.
I totally expected that. So
yeah. Nice.
Yeah, it was really good. So what did you guys do or is there things coming up when the book launches again?
Yeah. So I believe it officially launches on May 14th. We're going to do some promo on that date, and going forward as well. There will probably be a couple in-person readings, hopefully one in New York.
Nice.
And so, yeah, so you can expect to see some promo for Body Autonomy as well.
Nice. I'll put that in the show notes too. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from.
Yeah. So my name's Melodie. I have been in the adult industry as a worker for about 9 years now. Started as, I don't know what you call it. It's like the kind of sex work where you're just on Craigslist and hope that someone will like pay you $50 to post, to like send them a picture. Right.
Okay.
And so it was like a lot of that and a lot of like, are there any potential sugar daddies interested in taking me to like the mall? Cause I could really use a cute dress, like things like that. So like not quite a this, not quite an escort. Right.
Yeah.
And rest in peace, Craigslist personals.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So many people miss that.
Blessed be. Anyway, so was doing that for a while, started doing webcamming to supplement a full-time job, which was really fun. I loved being a webcam model.
Really? See, I started as a webcam model and I do not like webcamming.
You know what? It's not great as a like full-time job as someone who's introverted and also neurodivergent.
Same. Yeah.
It's a lot of performance that I couldn't handle, but you know, it was fun for like a little self-esteem boost. And you know,
it was better for me when I worked for a while and then went back and tried it and had people who were actually invested in me. Yeah. But when I first started 10 years ago and I had no audience and I was super shy and I didn't know how to talk to a screen, it was like terrifying. I would just sit and stare at them like, what do you guys want? I don't know. I'm not a performer though, so it is really hard for me.
Yeah, totally. And you know, it became harder and harder for me to do that long term. So I pivoted, went to grad school and wasn't making enough money doing camming and porn as a side gig. And so I started escorting.
That's such a different game. I went that route too, from online to escorting. And I was like, why did I do online stuff? This is so much better.
I
mean, not everybody feels that way, but for me, for my personality, it was a million times better.
Yeah, for me too. And I really think escorting for me, not only was like a huge economic relief during a really contentious time, but also helped me learn boundaries and be able to assert them and explore different aspects of my own sexuality. That was actually really like, it was really cool. It was really healing. It was really,
I've had that experience and I've like learned so much about, it's funny. I feel like, and I was telling my partner about this and they got they didn't really get offended, but I said something like, oh yes, you know, because when we first got together, I wasn't doing that. And I was like, I think I enjoy sex more now than I did before I was escorting, because there was a way that it like opened me up to like so many different ways of doing things that it made me like, more orgasmic, like all these things, because I think when you like are with primarily the same person all the time, you get like very kind of set in like, this is how you do things. And my partner was like, I thought you just liked me more.
That's amazing.
I was like, no, I do. I mean, not more. I've always liked them, but I was like, no, I do. But like, actually, this experience has like opened me up a lot and been really positive for my own experience with my own sexuality.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Poor PJ. They were like, I thought it was me. And I was like, oh, sorry.
It is and it isn't. And it's okay. Yeah.
I mean, our sexuality is always ours too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So I got done with grad school and, started working in nonprofits, which
is that what you went to school for?
I went to school for public administration. So yeah, nonprofit and kind of government sort of centered work. And, those public sector jobs aren't necessarily great paying jobs either. So
really,
it's almost like it was built that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, have kept doing sex work in various forms. I'm now primarily just an online and in-person BDSM provider.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so sort of pivoted over the years to kind of suit my personality and my kind of availability. But yeah, so now I do that very, very, very part-time while I co-direct a nonprofit of my own and also have a consulting firm. So
you're with Savannah Sly, right?
I am. We are co-directors of New Moon Network.
Yeah. So will you tell us a little bit about New Moon?
Yeah, absolutely. I love New Moon. It's kind of our brainchild. Essentially, New Moon is a national organization whose mission is to amplify resources and opportunities for people with lived experience in the sex trade.
Okay.
So we work with survivors and sex workers and anyone in between. To get resources to build capacity within the sex workers' rights movement, and also to do some donor education, philanthropy education to resource our movements so that we can live up to our potential.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I saw there's a couple of things that I've noticed that you all do that I really like. And one of them is the like kind of speaker hub,
Spokes Hub.
Spoke Hub. Yeah. Wait, how's it called? Speaker Hub.
It's called Spokes Hub. Yeah.
Spokes Hub. Yeah, that's really neat. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it's essentially as all, you said it. It's almost like a speaker academy. It's essentially a virtual class structure where anyone with lived experience can sign up to attend. Essentially aimed at individual advocates with this lived experience who are interested in plugging in to advocacy around the sex worker rights movement. And so we host these classes with different educators that we bring in around advocate safety, around how to talk to the media as a sex worker rights advocate, how to do research, different mix of hard and soft skills for folks to learn from each other in like this peer learning environment. And then what's really cool is after you take 4 or so classes, you essentially go through this really easy graduation process. And then further advocacy, that work that you do that's otherwise unpaid, the Spokes Hub program will pay you. So if you speak to a journalist or if you go to a conference or do any other kind of like public advocacy or education work, we have an awards pool where we pay advocates who have gone through this program to keep doing the work. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've always done this kind of work and, I go and speak at universities and, do different all the time, but like, I just started doing it, but I used to be a teacher, so it's not particularly like scary for me to do that. It was funny too, because the other day I went and gave a talk at a law school and I remember thinking before that, I don't really remember how to teach. I don't know how I did that. And then I'm in there, and then suddenly I'm saying to the professor, like, can I use these pens? And I'm like writing, and I was like, oh, I know how to do this. Like, I remember.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like riding a bike, but like, yeah. So I think that's, but coming from being being a professor, like, or an adjunct, I should say, it wasn't that exciting. There was no money in it. So that's how I'm here. But it wasn't that, like, it didn't feel like that big of a transition, but I feel like as sex workers, especially as out sex workers, we get asked to do this so much. And if you don't have a background in public speaking or in teaching or in writing or media, I imagine that would be fairly overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely. And even for us who've been doing it for a while, right?
Yeah.
Like, it takes a toll. And often we work in isolation, and we contribute to social justice in so many important ways. And that's largely uncompensated. And so it's kind of been my mission that when I'm not hustling, I want to, help other people with their hustle.
Yeah. So do you want to hear a story of what happened to me recently? Speaking of speaking, so the same law professor actually reached out to me, and this is interestingly at my alma mater, which is a terrible place. So Catholic conservative university. But she's teaching a trafficking class there. And so she's like, oh, we're going to have as a continuing education credit for the students, this panel, that they can go to. And it's on law enforcement response to trafficking. And I think it would be really important if you were there and on the panel and blah, 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 blah. And of course, like this funny part of the story, it's not funny, is that they didn't have a budget for this. So they didn't want to pay me, but they were like, oh, but the students aren't going to have any perspective besides blah, 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 blah. So I was like, okay. So then she's asking for all of this information. Can I please give my university accolades? Because this is an academic thing, blah, 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 blah. And she has to make me look legitimate, which I also think is kind of bullshit. Like anyone who's doing this work is legitimate, but there's games you play. So I'm giving her all of this stuff. And then a couple days later, I get a message, and the message says, Jesse, thank you for all of this stuff. But after a lot of talks yesterday with the panel organizers, we have to uninvite you because the state and federal prosecutors that are on the panel feel uncomfortable having you there.
Wow.
It's like, what? First of all, they presented it like an academic thing. I didn't think I was going to be on a panel with prosecutors, especially not federal and state prosecutors. That would have been useful information to me because I wouldn't have said yes to that anyways. And also, like, how do you invite somebody, take a bunch of their time, make them fill out all this stuff for you, and then uninvite you because it was shocking, but
that's
not
wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wrote a whole Trist article about it because I was filled with rage. So I just spilled it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, dealing with the media and institutions that aren't sex worker institutions, but that want you to show up as a sex worker is a really interesting and difficult process.
Oh, absolutely. And inaccessible for many of us, right? Like, how long did you spend doing that? And all in the name of like this anti-trafficking work, which is
bullshit.
They exploited you.
Yeah,
they ripped you off. Yeah.
They trafficked me in this whole thing.
Yeah.
And then, and also the thing that pissed me off about it is that what they're saying now is, okay, well, now it's no longer an educational panel. They're getting educational credits for an indoctrination session because the only side that they have presented is the cop side. Because they don't want any dissenting opinions or people who have any sort of other viewpoints. So it was
wow.
really disheartening. But yeah, I love that that you guys have funds to help kind of balance all of that out. Because it seems to me like the other problem there is that if you're requiring all of this of sex workers, but not paying them, then you're only getting voices of people who can afford to do volunteer work.
Yep. 100%. 100%. It's all very problematic.
Yeah. So, I mean, I brought you on. The point of the show is to talk not necessarily directly about sex work, but about what sex work allows you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually what you're saying is interesting because you've set up a organization that actually allows sex workers to do more. And so that's actually kind of a turn on this, but I think that's really that's actually kind of neat to think about, like what you're doing at like an organizational level to offer more to sex workers.
Yeah, thank you for that. I hadn't necessarily thought about it that way, but you're right. We're trying to empower and uplift the voices of individuals and also the organizations that those individuals belong to, whether they're doing direct service work for folks in our community or moving upstream to policy advocacy. And I think it's really important that we pay people for their lived experience. And in doing so, we're literally preventing exploitation. So
yeah. Right. Yeah. So how does this work for you? Because I'm talking about like what you're giving to sex workers, but what do you feel like sex work was kind of like allowed for you to do? And how do you think about, I want to get to your company, your consulting company, but how would you tie these things together?
Yeah, it all comes kind of full circle for me, really, because, I get to use my lived experience as a sex worker to drive this kind of more philanthropic work that I'm doing now with New Moon, which has allowed me to, really think about what it is that I want to do long term. And I really think, it is this kind of social justice philanthropy world where where I've been able to go into these spaces with lots of high net worth individuals and really help them start to break down their own assumptions of what a sex worker does and is and really like speak my truth in these rooms, which has been really powerful. And I think, there's immense opportunities for me to learn as well. It's also let me, really think about how I can use my own lived experience as an expert in kind of these more academic spaces, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the basis for starting my consulting firm is really like, I started kind of seeing these opportunities at the city and county and state level to like advise on different working groups that were stipended or that paid folks, right? And so just kind of like built up from there, really focusing on like, public safety interventions that de-center law enforcement and re-center folks who are being criminalized, including sex workers and drug users and people living unhoused.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So what does your consulting company do?
Yeah. So we're called Orange Cap Consultation, and that's kind of a nod to the harm reduction movement, the orange cap being representative of the hypodermic syringe, right? So
I like that. That's neat.
Thank you. Yeah. So we do a lot of like trauma-informed program design for social service organizations or for government agencies, nonprofits looking to do programmatic work that focuses on marginalized communities. I facilitate work groups. I help with things like nonprofit development and technical assistance for service providers. and some strategic planning as well.
Wow. Okay. So this might sound far afield, but this is what you just said made me think of. So, and maybe this might be something that you'd be interested in. So I've recently had social workers reach out to me, fair number of them, who want to figure out, especially social workers who work with disabled adults or with people who have different sort of barriers to intimacy, actually figure out how they can strategically like work with sex workers, build relationships with sex workers, to like serve their clients, because a lot of them don't know how to navigate that and have their heart in the right place where they're like, I make referrals for them for friend groups and for activities and for jobs and for housing and for all of these things. And a lot of them are like begging for more intimate services. I'm like, well, how do I find X, Y, and Z? But because of the criminalization of sex work, they're not actually sure how to do that. And it seems like something like the consulting that you're doing could work there to like, how do you connect these groups of people and navigate this without it being problematic for like your license? I mean, because from my perspective, I'm like, I can work with whoever I want to work with, but I'm not licensed by the state to work with clients. So it's very different on their end.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's super tricky with that licensure bit. But yeah, essentially I do that type of stuff on kind of a more institutional level.
Yeah.
But if there are individuals that are interested in kind of developing a system for how to do that, send them my way.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it seems like there's not a lot yet in terms of like resources for how to navigate stuff like that. And it seems like there should be.
Yeah, I think Trist, as you know, does a pretty good job of having like some resources, right? For clients at least, and kind of, you know, maybe some outside like skeptics, right? But I think having that component of like social workers or service providers, who are trying to reach sex workers specifically, that's a really interesting perspective that I haven't seen. Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things before you came on here that we talked about is that part of the work that you're doing is figuring out like, okay, so if you've built a career on sex work, where do sex workers, and I like, you're going to be the last episode, you're going to be the second to last, actually, now that I think about it, on the season. But there's something that I like about that, because the question is like, if you've built a career on sex work, like, what do you do when you either no longer want to do it or you can't do it for one reason or another? And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like your motivation for building a career that's sex work adjacent and how you've been talking to other sex workers about that. Thank you for listening to When We're Not Hustling. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Doing so will help other people find us. And if you're a sex worker who wants to come on the show and talk about your life outside of work, we would love to have you. Please send an email with more information to nothustlingpod@proton.me.
That's a great question. So, I mean, I think being a sex worker, you pick up so many transferable skills, right? Like marketing and social media and engagement, right? Even things that we don't necessarily think of as like separate things that are legit jobs, right? Like they totally are. Things like running a business, filing taxes, doing websites, like those are all important things, the admin, right? So I think it's really important for sex workers to just believe in themselves, right? Because you're already doing so much. If you're a sex worker, you're a business owner, and that makes you an entrepreneur. And that makes you eligible for all kinds of like startup funding if you want to do something else, right?
Mhm.
And so just believe in yourself, kids. Not to be that person.
But I do think that's important, though.
Yeah, and it's also important, like, that we, and I'm so glad that you're hosting this podcast, because it's important that we can, like, hear and see the other options so that we're not, like, stuck in a thing, right?
Right.
And we can have flexibility and mobility and come back to sex work when we feel like it feels best, and
Right.
and be able to float in between if that's what we want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so acknowledging that our skills are highly transferable. And for me, I think getting married and just getting older for me has been like the thing where I'm like, okay, I wanna focus my energy on kind of higher impact social good. And that means that I have to prioritize my time and my energy in a way that's gonna, like, sustain myself, and in doing that, in sustaining my business or my business.
Yeah. When did you get married?
I got married in March of 2020. So right before.
Oh my goodness. That's a time to get married.
Yep. We spent our honeymoon in quarantine, and it was kind of great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're like, wow, marriage. Now we never leave the house. We just stare at each other.
Yep. And we got dogs. We did the COVID dogs thing, Yeah. And so, I was doing full service sex work throughout the relationship, as my husband and I were then dating, and then several years into our marriage, and it just I think me getting older and tireder and kind of more focused on these other things have really like had to pare down my offerings in the boudoir.
I understand that. As an older provider, sometimes I still like what I do right now, but especially when I tour, I'm like, I don't know, it's rough because it's always more intense if I go and I tour, and then I'm like, this is exhausting. That there's going to be a time. I mean, I'm not there yet, but there will be a time in which I'm like, I need to transition into something that's just less physical, because the physicality of it can be a lot.
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, but that's with all jobs that are physical.
Absolutely.
That's not a sex work specific problem, or it's not a full service specific problem, but I do hear what you're saying, because I think people do need to, and part of it, I think, is that a lot of sex work is transient, like people are coming in and going out, like you said. But there are a lot of career sex workers, and there's a number of career sex workers. This is 10 years for me. And so I think, it is good and it's a young person thing. So a lot of young people aren't thinking about the future. But I do think as sex workers, we ought to be thinking about okay, so what happens when our bodies change, when I don't know if I'll want to do this when I'm postmenopausal, might want to be doing something else. A lot of escorts I know, when I used to be in a phone sex collective, went to phone sex because they just got tired of the physical part of it. But there's so many things that you could do. So many ways that you could take those transferable skills and put them somewhere else. Absolutely.
And, I love a career sex worker. We're doing the damn thing. Y'all are doing the damn thing. And I'm inspired by folks who can do this type of work for 10, 20, 30 plus years, right?
Yeah.
Y'all are goddesses.
We had Seska on the show, and she's been 25 years.
Wow. That's amazing. That's beautiful.
In different aspects. She started in like indie porn, and then she did escorting for 10 years or something. And now she's back into webcamming and did it through like a hysterectomy and everything, and talked a lot about that process of learning to totally pivot and do it differently when she had to.
That's so cool. I love that. Yeah.
But yeah, not everybody wants to do that. So for Val, I mean, there's, it's funny because when I was in academia, I dropped out of a PhD program. But when I was in my PhD program, and I hear a lot of academics say this, there is no discussion of anything besides being an academic when you're like in a PhD program, and people feel like they're failures if they don't do that. But there's so many different ways to build like careers. And I feel like that's what but when you're stuck in this like very siloed thing, you're like, well, I have to get a tenure track job or my life is over.
Oh my gosh.
And
yeah.
And I think that, it's easy to feel that way in this industry too, but I'm glad that there are people like you who are doing work to think of, okay, so how do we take all of that lived experience and all of those skills and put it into something else when either we need to or we just want to?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say too, like the being a sex worker aspect of my life has made being a business owner easier, especially when there are, because nobody tells you this, right? Like when you're a small business owner, cash flow is an issue.
Yeah.
Like you don't get the regular monthly or weekly paychecks. Like you gotta hustle for it, right? But then you also there's a turnaround time for whatever agency you're working for, right? So like sex work allows me to like take those risks and to have a little bit of period of time where like the invoice is not paid and I can, just call up a friendly client and, get my stopgap, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a columnist and like, I don't know when I get paid.
Yep.
They come when they come, my paychecks. And I'm like, I have a couple of outstanding invoices. It'd be nice if I got that money, but I can't count on it. It's not like it comes at a specific time.
100%. Yeah. And
even though I somehow manage to get my article in at the same time every week. So I don't know why.
Girl, that's real. And you've been a columnist for like 20 years, 10 years?
Oh, no. I was not that long. I was only a columnist for a year and a half before the pandemic. And then I was a weekly columnist at the city paper. And then I got furloughed because there was no venues that were paying for alt weeklies anymore. And then I started again at the beginning of this year. So yeah, but it's good. I like writing a little column.
Yeah.
It's a little, it's not really a little job. It's kind of a big job, but I like doing it.
That's great. I love that.
I'm always at, my columns are always due on Tuesday. And I have a client who always like texts me on Monday. I'm guessing because it's back to work time. And so he's always like, what are you doing? And I'm like, it's Monday. What do you think I'm doing? He's like, you getting your edits in? I'm like, edits? I'm writing this fucking article. We're not at the edit stage. But yeah. No, I've done freelancing for a lot of different places, but my column itself went on a couple years before the pandemic and then started again this year.
Okay. You're in my mind as just someone who's always just been this like prolific writer. So I hope you take that as a compliment.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yes.
If you just think I'm constantly writing articles for the last 20 years, I must be doing something right.
Your marketing and PR are on point. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you like? How do you envision your future, your career? What do you want your life to look like?
I've, for the past maybe 10, 15 years, I have had this idea in the back of my mind that, like, if only I were an heiress, and we're all like, a lot of us are like that, right? Like, if only I were an heiress,
Yeah.
I would want to legitimately do philanthropy, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
as a rich person. And since I'm not that, like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to do what I can within philanthropy and within, like, the small grant making that
Mm-hmm.
we do, because I think there's so much good work that's happening in the
Mm-hmm.
world and that's being done by sex workers and by
Yeah.
artists and other kind of folks who are outcasts from society, right?
Yeah. Right.
Um, and I wanna fund it, and I
Yeah.
want, like, every artist and every sex worker and every care worker and I just want, like, I want us to all be working in pursuit of our wildest dreams, right? And I wanna
Mm-hmm.
fund
I
that
love
work, and I
that.
also wanna go to the fancy galas and, like, be wooed by, whatever,
Yeah.
with the fancy canapes
Yeah.
and, um
Are you friends with Caitlin Bailey?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Caitlin Bailey is one of my favorite people.
Oh yeah, she's fantastic. But she's so funny because she's into fundraising, and she makes these jokes about what the difference between like sex work and philanthropy is. She's like, the difference is that one you get paid up front.
Yes, that is 100%.
Yeah.
That's 100%. And someone who has to raise funds myself, can verify that.
Yeah. Because
It
you have
it
to.
does it feels like hoeing, just at a different level.
Yeah, that's what she says.
Yep,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is New Moon funded by mostly philanthropy or
Yeah.
grants?
So, I mean, we have like one or two kind of larger anchor donors,
Mm-hmm.
that seeded the organization,
Yeah.
and we're slowly starting to get, some variations in grants and fundings and things. We don't have like an endowment, right? We're not
Yeah.
huge. We still have
Mm-hmm.
to fundraise for every dollar that we redistribute into the
Yeah.
movement.
Right.
But hopefully in the next year or so, we have some big goals.
Mm-hmm.
We would love to have just like a $2 million slush fund to put into the movement every year,
Oh, that would be
and
amazing.
really see
Mm-hmm.
like are people being taken care of, right? And also laws being changed in our favor, and also culture being changed in our favor.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that some of the goals that you brought up while you were talking match really well with what mine are in this show, because I really do want the culture to change for people to be able to see like sex workers are not who you think they are.
Yeah.
They're not the stereotype that we have of them. They are all kinds of people. They're that and all kinds of other things.
Yes. I actually pitched that almost exact idea to TEDx Minneapolis this year,
Oh,
and
really?
they fully rejected it. But like having that initial conversation and then some
Yeah,
follow-ups where people were like, "Oh, this is an interesting thing." Like, I think
yeah,
was good advocacy, but I definitely think that specific message that, like, we're not a monolith, we're not just
right.
this one type of thing, is
And
really
that people
important.
come into the industry from all different kinds of backgrounds and for all
Mhm.
different kinds of reasons. And the work is very varied too. So, what you're doing as an escort or a BDSM provider is not the same as what a cam girl is doing, is not the same as what an OnlyFans model is doing. And
Absolutely.
or stripper. And that I think the beautiful thing about that is that there is like space for so many different types of personalities. Like you were saying, if
Mhm.
you're an introvert and neurodivergent, what routes are like good for
Yeah.
you based on like if you're a trained performer, which ones are good. There's different personalities and different bodies and different demographics, and that's like kind of the neat thing, I think, is that that matches the clientele too, which is that there's all kinds of people who want all kinds of different things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because I think people think, yeah, I mean, people have all kinds of misconceptions, obviously.
Yeah. And, when I first started when I first started getting into porn,
Mm-hmm.
as a performer, moving from cam to porn,
Yeah.
um, there was a point in time where I thought, I'm a rather petite person. I'm chubby, but I'm,
Mm-hmm.
5'3".
Me too.
Um, yeah. Okay. Cute. Cute. Love that for
Yes.
us.
We have our
Um,
round faces too.
yeah, and like we don't comfortably fit like within like
Right.
curvy or BBW or all these
Yeah.
things. And so there was a point where I was like, I either need to like lose 50 pounds or gain 100? Like where is
Yeah.
my, and I
Mm-hmm.
had a really profound like sex worker who I was working with and in contact with at the time, who was like, no, you can't think like that. Like
Yeah.
there is someone and there's something for you,
Right.
and you are going to be you are someone's taste already.
Yeah.
Like there's no
Right.
need to
The
change or
change.
to,
Yeah.
yeah. And I
Yeah, I
think
think that's absolutely true. I wrote a piece for Vice about exactly that. Many years
nice.
ago, like in 2017 or 2018, about the in-betweens, the not BBWs, but the not I don't fit into the
Right.
yeah. And that's
Yeah.
actually kind of a hard space because you don't know how to market.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that like whatever it is that you do though, somebody is into that.
Yeah.
You just have to find your people. And the advice that I've also often given to people who are coming in new is that um the closer, speaking of like longevity, I think the closer that your branding is to like who you actually are,
Mhm.
the easier it is to do the job. Because if you're trying to be something else to attract a certain market, they're not going to be your people. Like you need to
Right.
find your people.
Right. And that's actually that specific piece of advice I've been seeing in like business coaching, like
Interesting.
seminars, like
Yeah.
there is an ideal client for you as a sales professional or as a coaching professional,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And your job is to be as authentic about yourself as you can so that you reach that specific market. And then the revenue that you get from kind of putting out that authenticity is
Right.
actually better for your business and is more sustainable long term anyway. So I
Right.
love that.
Yeah. It's funny. I have a client that I really like that I saw yesterday. And he was like, because we have a really good like rapport, and he said, how much of a chameleon are you? And I was like, what? And I didn't really understand his question because I'm not one at all. Like I'm always just
Yeah.
kind of myself. And he was like, well, you just like come in and totally fit into what I want. And I just assume that you do that with all these different clients. And I'm like, no, it's just that you like what I am.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but I was taken aback, and there was a part of me that was like, should I be offended about this? That he thinks I'm putting on this show? But then I was like, no, actually, he's telling me you're exactly what I want.
Yeah.
And that's like amazing. But he didn't like fully believe that that was just
Yeah.
that I wasn't putting on a show.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's real, but I think that's very heartwarming. That he's like, "Are you sure?
Are you
Because
really good
you're
at this? Or
perfect."
like, what?
Yeah.
And I woke up this morning and my first thought was like, a chameleon. I'm not even a chameleon at all. But
Yeah,
I understand the question.
for
Because
sure.
it's coming out of this insecure, like, are we having a real interaction or
Yeah.
are you just giving me exactly what I want? And I'm like, I'm actually not good at giving people exactly what they want. I just find the
Yeah.
people that want what I want, and then it all works out
Yes.
fine. I mean,
That's
not
beautiful.
always, but that's the goal, I think.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I like to end the show with 3 questions. What are you reading right now?
Ooh, good question. I've just come from a string of philanthropy conferences that have
Mm.
all thrown books at me. Um, One that I have almost finished at this point is White Women Cry and Call Me Angry by
Oh, that's a good title.
Dr. Yanique Redwood. It's amazing, and I have cried already. I'm reading The Holy Hour.
Aw, nice.
I got that last week and making my way through that. It's a beautiful collection.
It's so pretty. I mean, just like aesthetically pretty. They did such a good job of putting that together.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And what else do I have here? Oh, Manufacturing Freedom by Elena Shee, who is with Red Canary Song up in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Are they still active?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah, they do a lot.
Yeah, nice. Okay, and what are you listening to?
I have recently been really entrenched by this Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef. So I've been listening to diss tracks.
Okay, so what is the beef? Because all I see is people talking about it, but I don't actually know what the beef is. And I love Kendrick Lamar, but I don't know what the beef is. Can you explain this beef to me?
You know, the beef is deep-seated, and I think has a touch of like xenophobia and you know, performative blackness. And so it's just like
what are the sides? Like Kendrick thinks what about Drake and Drake thinks what about Drake?
I mean, Drake is kind of petty and calling Kendrick like short and like making fun of his size. Yeah, like literally short, like you a small dude. And Kendrick is coming back spitting fire and talking about how Drake's like an actual pedophile.
Yeah, that seems worse than being short.
Right. So it's just been this very like it's a very fun reality show happening.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to that and like some of the culture podcasts around that happening.
Yeah. I got to dig deeper into that. My son is 18, and when he's around, when we're in the car together, we'll listen to Kendrick. And he tells me like he does what I did when I was 18, which is like he will listen to like every lyric and then study like, oh, Kendrick was in South Africa when he wrote this, and he was at a store and blah, blah, blah. And I love that because I did that when I was a teenager, but I don't have time now for all of that. And
right.
I'll ask him what he knows about this.
Yes, you should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. And what else am I listening to? I mean, When We're Not Hustling, obviously.
Oh, thank you.
Best show. And SZA. A lot of SZA.
Is that
it's an artist.
SZA, SIZZA?
SZA.
Oh, I know who that is. Yeah. I didn't know that's how you pronounce that.
You know, I didn't either. I just took a shot.
No, I'm sure you're right. Okay. And lastly, what are you excited about?
I am excited about next week. I get to go to XBiz in Miami. It's going to be.
So many people are going.
I'm so excited to be on a beach and to schmooze and to talk about all the things that we're doing, and also just to be around pretty babes. And
okay. And where can people find you and your other projects?
Yes. So people can find me at bio.site/Melodie. That's MELODIE.
Wow. You got that with your first name?
I did. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it is.
The podcast listeners won't see me dancing, but I'm dancing on camera right now.
No, that is wild.
Yeah, bio.site/Melodie, or at newmoonnetwork.org. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter at theworld_on_fire.
Oh, I love that.
And on Instagram, thank you, on Instagram at MelodieKK.
So it was great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk to you.
It was great to talk to you too. Thank you for joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. You can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual or visit my website at jessiesage.com. The show was produced by Emily Foster. The music is by Benjamin J. Benamati. Our intern is Anna Fisher. You can follow us on socials on Instagram and Twitter at Not Hustling Pod. Signing off. Have a great week.